Brie Larson returns as Captain Marvel in this Nia DaCosta directed film, alongside Monica Rambeau, who we met in WandaVision, and Miss Marvel, played with such energy by Iman Vellani, whose powers have become entangled just in time for a new threat. Yes, the Kree and Dar-Ben are kicking butt, but our Marvels are there to take it on. So we know there's been a recent run of disappointments within the Marvel Universe, people citing that Marvel have lost their touch after Endgame, therefore forgetting about Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, just to name a few. And this film has had its fair share of knocks before anyone's had a chance to see it. Is it because it's directed by Nia DaCosta, who brought us the really well rebooted and reconceived Candyman? Is it because it stars Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, and Iman Vellani, and there are no real strong male characters in it? Makes you wonder, Andy. But what I do know is both you and I had a lot of silly fun. I had a really good time at this admittedly silly but downright fun film.
Oh, yes. I've been saying to people all week when they've asked me what I thought of it, that it's a bit of a mess. It doesn't give you any time to breathe. It jumps straight into action and then just races along from place to place with frenetic fury. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a big beaming smile on my face for the whole 1 hour 40 of it, because it was an absolute blast of a film. It was energetic. It was fun. It was what I want blockbuster entertainment to be. The cast were really gelling well. The essential trio of Carol Danvers, Monica Rambeau, and Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, played by Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, and Iman Vellani, absolutely gel together as the perfect central trio. Carol's coping with past trauma, trying to tap into her memories, but realizing what bad things she did when she was under Kree control, and how she basically eradicated most of the Kree at the end of it. Monica is coping with a sense of abandonment, after feeling that everyone who she loved had just either died or forgotten about her. And Kamala is just fangirling out and solving everyone's emotional crisis with a hug, which results in them bonding perfectly in a great mid-film moment of montage training that is fun to watch. And by the end of it, they are a dynamic team. One is the strength, one is the brains, and Kamala is certainly the heart. It's a perfect trio that work in unison, and they play together so well. And the stars who are portraying those roles are so immensely likable that you just can't help but be swept up by it all.
I'll point out that it does have a few problems. It does zip along at a fair old pace, and the energy is fantastic. Occasionally, I wanted it to take some breath. I don't know if that was a decision made in editing or there were recuts of the film, but I wanted it to take a bit of a breath at the beginning and find its feet. But that's a small complaint, because has been, after everything that Marvel's has been set up about, the worst film that Marvel's produced so far, the shortest, the lowest budget, etc., etc. It's a much welcome surprise and a good shot in the arm. You know, people complain about Marvel doing the same thing time and time again. And when they do something different, then they get slated for doing something different. And this is different. I would go as far as to say that this is Marvel's Barbie.
Yeah. All the males out there who've not been to see this because Marvel shouldn't make these films are ignoring the fact that this isn't particularly aimed at them. This is aimed for female market. This is aimed for teenage girls and young girls to have heroes that they can recognize on the big screen and they can embrace. And if the rest of us enjoy it as we go along, same way with Barbie. Barbie wasn't necessarily designed for us 50-year-old males, but if we can embrace it when we're watching it and realize the joy in it, it's just another benefit for the whole production. And this was the most fun I've had in a Marvel film for the last few films, aside from Guardians 3.
Really.
Guardians, yeah. I said to you after it finished that this felt like the most comic book film that Marvel have done because of the pacing of it, because it jumped straight into the action. The villain is slightly underdeveloped. Zawa Ashton playing Dar-Ben doesn't feel like she has enough to her, but there's enough seeds of why she's doing what she is for you to connect with and realize. Without it, in the past, Marvel would have spent an additional 40 minutes with backstory for this character. 40 minutes that would have maybe slowed the film down too much. And maybe they could have gone for some kind of an extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes. This is the first time that I've actually said that maybe a Marvel film could do with a bit more in it. Just to, like you say, give it some breathing space, to like give us some time to like let the story settle. But there's enough there to just have fun with. And yeah, it's fast paced. It's comparatively short. And for 1 hour 40, you can't really go wrong.
I was going to say, this is a team up story aimed at a different kind of Marvel audience. This is where you take your teenage daughters to, and they will get female bonding story. And that is perfect. It's a perfect antidote to everything that we've seen across countless superhero films, where you get the one female character who's part of the team. Even as much as I love Avengers, there's only one female character in it. There are no significant, other than Nick Fury, and even he's a small part of the story, no significant male characters, because you know what? He doesn't need them. It's about this bunch of girls proving it doesn't matter what gender you are to be heroic. And I love that. I thought that was so refreshing.
So refreshing and fun. And I need to give special mention out to Kamala Khan's family, played by Zenobia Shroff, Sagar Sahik, and Mohan Kapoor. Her family dynamic, which we saw so beautifully in the TV series of Ms. Marvel, is given even more joy on the big screen as they're reacting to this strange chaos that is invaded into their life as Carol Danvers just pops up out of the blue. Comical relief is fantastic. It doesn't feel like it overdoes the comedy, unlike, say, Thor, Love and Thunder, which felt like it was trying to shoehorn in a joke every 30 seconds. The humor in this seems to come along naturally from the charm of it, and that charm is all Kamala Khan. Kamala Khan is the character to go and see this film for, if nothing else. Even if you weren't a fan of Captain Marvel and you thought Brie Larson's take on it wasn't good, ignore that. Go in to watch Iman Vellani playing Kamala Khan on the big screen, and you will swiftly start to love everything that's going on.
One sequence got to mention. Who would have ever thought we were going to get a song and dance sequence in a Marvel film? And it worked perfectly, and it was bold, it was odd, and it was a lot of fun. Ignore what you're hearing, especially from male commentators. Go and see this film, because put everything aside that's been fed to you. This is a hugely entertaining film, and it's witty and it's clever and it's silly, and it's got one of the funniest needle drops in the Marvel universe today. And in a little over 100 minutes, this is how a good superhero film can be different and still give you everything you want at the same time. Michael Fassbender plays a killer for hire. Familiar territory. He lives his life in the shadows, but when a job goes wrong, he's got to consider and forced to take revenge on his employers one by one. And from that, you're going to think familiar territory. From by that, you would consider we're in familiar territory. And yes, we are. But we have it with David Fincher, who always manages, even through his most what is what word I was looking, even in his most generic films, always has a particularly dark side to him. And it's good to see him bring his dark side back, especially in an environment. It's got an amazingly suspenseful opening sequences. The film is compromised into chapters. Michael Fassbender should have been Bond. I think he's too old now, but I should have been Bond. I think it's got some great needle drops, but it is familiar, Andy, and that kept coming to mind all the way through.
Yeah, on paper, this could have been an all-out John Wick style action fest, but in the hands of Fincher, it is lent a neo-noir approach. The voiceover from Fassbender divulging the killer's inner monologue and his mantra, which is a lie, needs to be stated throughout the film. And that his inner monologue just like talks about what he does and why he does them and how he's cold and he doesn't get connected to things, works to draw us into the mind of this, what should be an unlikable person, and see how he keeps his emotions in check even when he's in danger of being overwhelmed by them. It's a great way to explore the dual nature of someone who makes a living killing people, with a non-judgmental eye on the assassin. In the same way that last week when we spoke about A Monster Calls is like all the stories about the dual nature of man, and a good man can do bad things and vice versa. This is the perfect film to follow that with, because this is a good man who does bad things, but tries to convince himself that he's not actually getting connected to them, when inside he knows he really is. I found myself fascinated by it. I was drawn into it. And yes, there was a lot of things that I'd found familiar. And, you know, had it played out as a John Wick kind of like action, I think it would have just been trite and formulaic. But it's just given so much more weight to it by the approach and by Fincher's beautiful skill at direction that serves the scenes well. He knows how to set up a shot. He knows how to get things lit. He knows how to make things look beautiful and intense. And there is one standout action sequence within the film that becomes almost John Wick-esque, but with a more clumsy brutality to it. And that's when he's taking on the Brute. But I found this was a nice cold thriller that drew me into the mind of a complicated individual and kept me surprised.
I agree,
right up to the end.
And I agree, and I think, you know, the themes of this have about playing into what it's like to be somebody who basically has lost their soul, and how much that, what the cost of that is. And I think nowadays you can't help but draw comparisons with John Wick. And so for some, not for me, and by the sounds of it, not for you either, the film's ending could ultimately feel, that aloofness to the ending could feel like a bit of an anticlimax. But I thought that was quite a bold approach for what this film is really, really about. And as you put it, if it had gone full Wick, for want of a better term, then it would have been that over familiar territory that we've been in before would have played out to expectation. And I think, well, not Fincher's best. This is no Fight Club. This is no Seven. It just proves that he's such a masterful filmmaker.
Yeah. For as long as Fincher keeps reanalyzing how we look at genres in every approach that he does and makes beautiful films, I will always sign up for them. And I'd love for him to work with Fassbender again and again in future, because the pair have clearly worked together well. Fassbender really well. Is magnificent in here. Yeah, well worth checking out. It was on cinemas for the past few weeks. It's now on Netflix, so everyone should be spending 2 hours in the mind of a trained killer.